Hi, welcome to cgtoots.com. I'm Ron Davey. I'm a lead environment artist at Digital Extremes. Today I'm going to be building a subway entrance. Here we go, from New York or any city. What I'll be doing is today I'll be showing you the low poly creation and how I go about it in this video. And then I'll be moving on to high poly video, and then from there the unwrap and baking of the normals. And finally, the final video will be will be the texture and the final render. So what I'm doing here is I've just taken a box, and I'm just basically getting the proportion of one of the bottommost railing of the side of the subway entrance. This using I use snap to grid there just to make sure the measurements are precise and locked to grid points. Level designers tend to like that, so they can in whatever studio's engine you're using, they can place it a lot easier along the grid if it's built to a grid. Uh, Also, you got to remember to use some of your own artistic license. You don't have to do everything perfect. Generally, your lead will tell you specifics about the task that has been assigned to, size, dimensions, texture, size, whether or not a high poly model is required, etc. Excuse me, and also reference. What I'm doing here is I'm now creating the sides and the posts where the railing, the spindles will join up. I use a lot of Control D, which is duplicate, and I also extrude, but I don't use the extrude gizmo once it's up there. I switch back this to the regular manipulator, which the shortcut is W. So here I'm just made one. I copied it. Now I'm selecting the faces and I'm using the cut face tool. Actually, insert edge loop tool there. But what it doesn't do is when you have two separate objects and you try to do edges on both at the same time, it won't. So I just did it once on each one, selected them, scaled them down, and it's about where I want to extrude into the next piece to join it. So all I did there was I selected edges and I just extruded the edge, scaled it over, extruded it over. Now I'm just welding the verts. Somewhere along the way, I grabbed some verts and I moved some things. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it works out, sometimes you have to fix it. So now I'm just extruding the other end to fill it out. Roughly, I deleted the end faces because they'll be hidden in other geometry. That's one way to save polygons when you're building something is whatever's going to be jammed into some other geometry or the ground, you delete those faces. They're hidden, never be seen anyways. So now I'm creating the top railing where actually is probably the most intricate of the bacon will happen because there's a pattern that appears on the side of it. Excuse me. And now what I'm doing, I'm just making little pieces on the bottom where the spindles will go. Taking some artistic freedom here with how the thing looks because I only have one reference picture and sometimes you got to make some stuff up as you go along. But this is a pretty simple object, so I'm pretty sure I'm doing it pretty close to what it would look like. So again, I just created a cube. Now I'm making the spindle. Which I'm now just resizing, selected verts. Now I'm just placing it, and I'm just going to Shift D is special duplicate, and then you just have to hit Shift D after that to duplicate it in the exact same dimensions. So I'm just placing it here. I will actually, in the end, delete most of these and just map one, maybe two, maybe three of them for some variation. There's no use unwrapping all of these spindles. I like to build the low poly complete and then delete what I need to do and unwrap that. Another way to do is build a spindle, unwrap it, and then move it along to where you want. Just basically build, unwrap as you go through your low poly. It all depends. Depends on what you like. So now I'm just noticed that the top railing wasn't exactly scale, or wasn't proportional to what I'd like. I'm now saving it. I would recommend saving at least every few minutes with any 3D program. Max, Maya, Softimage, they all have their own little quirks, and sometimes they just crash on you. So I'd recommend saving a lot, as if Maya doesn't have an autosave like Max. Excuse me. Here I'm making the signs that the subway signs that display the information um, to people wanting to know what subway stop it is, etc. So these are just basic cubes. Just click create, and then cube, and I just basically scale it, place it where I think it looks good. Continue to look at the reference, try to get a proportional scale, placement, all things like that. Pretty dead on. Now I'm making the light post, I believe. Yep, I'm just making the base here. And the light post, I'll actually just build the one and duplicate it, and in the end, it'll just be a duplicate moved down to the other end. So both light posts will be the same, but they're far enough apart that the player won't, unless they're looking super close at it, won't notice that it's the exact same texture job on it. I'll also do it with the spindles, like I said, and both sides of the final object will be the same, because the player will never see both sides at the same time, so they won't know that it's the same texture job. So I'm just creating the base here, and I'm just on this particular object I decided to bevel it, give it a bit of a bevel. Then I just opted for just an extrude and taper that in, scale that in. You generally don't want to use too many bevels on objects, especially something that will be duplicated. Several times in a level, and that could just cause major slowdown for your game. So you want to try to keep it as low poly as possible. With the normal map, you'll be able to achieve that beveled look. So I'm just taking a look at things here, making sure everything's kind of in proportion, the right height. And now I'm just building the light fixture and the light bulb. This is where my artistic license comes in. I'm just basically building whatever I feel like right now. I kind of want to go. I'm gonna try the sphere like it is in the actual reference. But I'm not a big fan of doing spheres if you don't have the polygons to give it a nice round look. And this particular polygon, this particular sphere, even at 12 subdivisions, it I don't know, this doesn't look very round to me, and I end up not going with it and just creating my own little light. Yeah, see there, I've made the decision. So what I'm going to do is just build kind of a square light, and in the high poly I'll make it look like it's framed. I think it just kind of gives it a little more of an old school look. So again, I'm just using extrude face and the move and scale tool to basically get the dimensions I like, the design I like. So what I've done here is I separated the light bulb because it will have when you put it in game, there might be another shader attached to it, so it can turn on and off, etc. So what it is, this separated is another object, and I collapsed the faces on the inside of the fixture just to close it off, so there won't be any holes. Just adjusting things a bit more, just to my liking. Some things were a little off there. I had to fix some verts. So as you can see, like I said before, I'm just going to be using the same light post on both ends. So I've decided there that the taper wasn't quite to my liking, so I just, again, Control D is duplicate, and I just moved it down. So here I'm going to start building the front of the subway entrance. On the front, it's a little more ambiguous in the reference, so I'm going to take some liberties here when building this front section with the TV. I'm not sure. I think in the final one, I'll just make the TV screen maybe more of a poster area where posters and adverts and whatnot have been plastered on. Just because for final render, I don't have a particular shader that will make it look like a TV. You know, maybe with some moving video or whatever. See how much time we have. So I've just made the two tops. I've just duplicated down to this will be the sign. That's not as typical sign as a stereotypical sign design. It looks like it's more inlaid into the metal, so I'll just make one big poly there and then bake in the sign when I do the high poly. So here I'm just making where the TV will go, the TV base, where it will be attached to. Moving it just to get her in there, make her look like it actually was built by a real person. Again, I'm just using there, I just connect the two edges, just select the two edges, and up in Edit Mesh, I hit Bridge. And now we'll close off the edges. Here I'm designing the TV, just pushing and pulling. Scale. Put it on there. Do I like it? Yep. So what I'm doing now is, again, just selected all the faces. Scaling. Just looking at it. It's never a bad thing to take a close look at your model as you go along. Take a break. You know, come back to it. So I've just selected the face, just extrude in, and then I'll just do the same thing again. Select, extrude, scale in. And I'm just trying to get the proportion right. You'll find that you do this a lot where you just don't think things are things don't look right after a while taking a look at. I just moved the lights up to replicate the reference a little better. Like I said, if this was a real object I was putting into a game, I'd be a lot more particular about the scale, about the position. I would have taken this object into our engine to once the low poly was created, to place it, make sure the scale is right, and placement. So what I'm doing now is I'm building the asymmetrical poles on the other side. Basically, it's just going to be the same base, although I'll texture both of them separate to kind of give it a little variation. But it's the same design. These ones are just capped off by a metal piece. I've noticed that the taper was in the wrong spot. Didn't like it, so I just deleted the other object, fixed it, selected a face, and I use a script called dupe extract. It's a handy script. You just select faces, hit this. It gives you the option whether or not to delete the old faces or keep them, and it makes it as a new object for you. It's quick. I like it. I use it a lot. It's one of the tools I use the most. Again, it's called dupe extract. I highly recommend it. So what I've done now is I've just I built the front. I'm happy with that. I'm now with the side. I've moved and I've duplicated just to move it over. See how it looks. Make sure all my proportions are right. And what I'm going to do too with this one, I've noticed that the signs, I moved one of the signs by accident. So there we go. I'll duplicate the final pull and move it down and line it up. I've left some things a little off here and there, just to give it some authenticity, because nothing in the real is made perfect. So you just want to make things a little off here and there, just to give it some character. You know, pull avert, divide a face a bit. You know, knock an edge in, something like that. Just yeah, give it some personality. So what I'm doing here is creating the cement base that that would attach to the playing ground. Um, in this case, it would be a sidewalk. So it's made out of cement. What I'm doing is just select face, extrude, select the faces, do insert edge loop tool, and so on. Extrude, sorry, and then insert edge loop, etc., etc. Just getting the proportions right here. I've left the extra edge loops in there for now, so when I make my high poly, when I make my high poly, it's easier to make basically. So here I'm just beveling the edges. It is made out of cement, and I want to give it a nice round edge. So along with the normal, this is gonna it should give it a nice edge. Generally, you want to stay away from bevels as much as possible too. They waste polygons. You should be able to get that look just from good normal. So there we go. There is the low poly in this process of creating a subway entrance from low poly to final in-game model for cgtoots.com. Hi, welcome back. This is Ron Davey, lead artist at Digital Extremes for cgtoots.com. What I'm doing right now is I'm starting to set this file up, this low poly file up, for my high poly version. So what I'm doing now is I'm just basically going through renaming things in the outliner, which is basically like Photoshop's layer system, where although Maya does have a layer system, this just kind of keeps everything in order. I like using this a lot more than their actual layer system. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just renaming all these low poly objects, and with the underscore L at the end, so I can differentiate easily between the two low poly and high poly version of the same object. So what I'm doing now is I'm going through figuring out what objects I don't need to unwrap basically twice or numerous times. And I'm also will be basically, as you can see there, I just deleted that entire side, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate it once I'm done texturing everything here, because the player won't really notice that it's the same texture on either side. This allows me to optimize my texture space too, and it's not very it's a waste of time unwrapping everything when you don't need to. So I'm just now separating this one side into separate pieces for the normal bake that I will be doing after I create the high poly versions of these objects. This just allows Maya to bake it better. Basically, if you could do it all in one piece, but you won't get a very clean normal, and it just won't look right. The program can't really figure out how to do it correctly when it's all just one giant object. So you just separate them into separate objects. It also helps you make the high poly a lot easier too, because it's a lot of insert edge loops when you're making your high poly here in bevels. So again, I'm just separating everything into low poly pieces, deleting what I will duplicate after I unwrap and texture it. For example, these spindles. I'll just basically I'll unwrap one and probably do 2 or 3 versions of it on the texture, and then just pop them into place when we're all done. So I'm using again dupe extract when I'm making these objects. It just allows you to basically gives you the option to keep the original faces and make a duplicate, or delete the original faces, which that is what I'm doing here. So as you can see, I'm separating the light fixture up, the light pole up, into their own little pieces. Again, it's this repetitive process here where select face, dupe extract, delete original faces, yes, over to the outliner, rename. You'll end up with 20, 30 pieces sometimes, if not more, um, when you're doing this process. This is obviously one of the more tedious things when creating an in-game model. It's obviously not the fun part like texturing is or building it, but you know there's always a price to pay when you're doing things. So this is the price you're paying. So we're just about done there. Hi there. Welcome back. We're now continuing with the high poly creation. I've decided to start with the TV here. And what I've done is what I'm doing here is I'm inserting straight edge loops to make it easier on myself when I add the extra in edge loops after the bevels to create the high poly. Straight edges just make it a lot easier when inserting edge loops. You can do it with the diagonal edges that are there, but it can be a bit of a pain sometimes. So once I add the horizontal ones in here, I will delete those diagonal edge loops that you see. So those are just straightening those out. Excuse me. Just makes it easier again, trying to keep everything straight. So when you add edge loops, they go in nice and straight too. You don't need all these crooked lines all over the place because a lot of edges start appearing once you start inserting these edge loops. So what I've decided to do here is bevel our TV here, the inside and outside of the frame. So I'm just selecting the edges on both sides of the TV or some sort of screen that will show either movies or ads or whatever that they do. So there we go. I'm just zooming in to check out. That's a little tiny. Punching some other numbers. Getting there. And yeah, I think I'm happy with this. With beveling, you can just take some time punching in different values to see what you like. So what I'm doing here is again selecting the edges, trying to insert the edge loops. Some sort of weird glitch happening where it won't let me, so decided to go to the cut face tool. So selected faces. I'm just inserting the edges. Cut face tool works actually probably almost as well, if not better, than the insert edge loop tool, because you don't have to worry about selecting edges. You just got all the faces selected and away you go. And on something like quite rectangular like this object, it's you won't run into any hassle. So now for the inside here, since it's these edge rings, I've selected select one of the edge rings, hit select edge rings, and it goes all the way around. Makes a complete selection. I insert edge loop tool. I've got it on multiple edges to 2 and autocomplete, so it wraps right around the entire object, and then I just scale it out to the position I want. I hit the shortcut number 3 to preview the window. Preview the smoothness, and it looks all right. Now I'm going to add a couple more details. There are these little extruded in edges. Just a nice little detail. Will show up good on the final normal map. So I'm just inserting some new edges. Scale the middle one in. You can see it's messing with the smoothing groups there, but that'll be remedied momentarily when I add those extra edge loops on the outside, which constrain the smoothness when you do get to that point. So you can see it cleared right up. Again, another extra edge here for constraint. Another one here, and I'll hit the number 3. Check out the final result. This is just a preview. And then number 2 is 50% smoother than number 1. Takes you back to the original um, state. So there we go. I've shown all. That's the TV. What I do is just pick the low poly version, and I Control D, which is duplicate, and add instead of the underscore L at the end of the name, it's underscore H to allow me to realize what's high poly and what's low poly in the final outliner. Because you can get quite a few objects in there, and it's when they're named the same, you need something to differentiate them. So again, I've just taken this this object, adding the appropriate edges here. It's I forgot that face, so I'm just using the split polygon tool just to connect those verts. That's a handy tool I like to use a lot. Excuse me. So, inserting some final edges here with the cut face tool, just to tighten this little bend up. It's not a complete 90 degree, but you don't want it rounded either, which would be the result if I didn't have these extra edges on the outside. There's the preview of it, back to the original preview. There we go. So that object is done. Now I move down to the front sign. Here there'll be a little bit more detail added. I'm going to take the sign section and extrude it in momentarily. Just figuring out what I wanted to do here. How much whereabouts do I want the edges. There we go. Just trying to get the right kind of proportion. Again, you don't need to be dead on, but you want to be able to look at the reference and look at your model when it's done and go, and be able to recognize that that's what what you were trying to replicate. So I'm just making some inside edges here. I'm going to make a double extrusion in. You want to keep an eye on, since I'm doing it on both sides, that I'm not popping one face out the other side. So what I've noticed I've done by mistake is I wasn't paying attention, and I didn't duplicate the original low poly version of the front sign. And now that I've created the high poly version of it, I have to make quickly a new low poly version of it. Thankfully, it's just a big rectangle, so it only takes me a few moments here to do it. This video is obviously sped up so that you don't end up watching me model for hours on end here. But this high poly creation of this model, since it's quite rectangular, almost the entire thing shouldn't really take you long. It shouldn't take you very long at all. Maybe an hour, 2 hours tops. All it is basically just edge loops you're adding in, and a few bevels here and there. If it's something more organic, like a statue or a tree or anything with a lot more spheres and flowing lines to it, it will take you a little longer to get all the edges right, so that there's no pinching or weird anomalies happening when you hit the preview smooth button, which again is the number 3 on your keyboard. So I'm just taking the base of the front here, and I'm just adding all the applicable edges that need to be added, so that we get a nice smooth product, nice smooth conclusion to it. So there we go. I'm done the front. Just selecting what I want to do next. I've decided to do the pole base, which will also I'll duplicate over for the light post base too. This I'll add another little detail that wasn't modeled in the low poly. Purely being built, as you'll see in a moment or two, for high poly purpose only, just for the bake. It's not going to be actual geometry in the final product. So I'm just adding in all the edges. Select edge, insert edge loop tool, but I'm going to bevel these edges. That's way too large. Knock it down a bit more, punch in another value. And there we go, kind of like it. I'm going to try collapsing these edges, but again, you don't really have to worry about polygonal budgets when doing high poly. I mean, don't go crazy, because it'll just get hard to keep track and to edit when you need to if there's a billion edges kicking around. So I'm just selecting all the edge rings here. Insert edge loop tool. Looking good. And with insert edge loop tool, it doesn't. If you're selecting edges where there's a hole interrupting the selection, it won't do both sides. As you can tell here, I've selected both sides and it didn't work, so I'm just going along in each side individually. Thankfully, when you're doing this kind of thing, you don't have to be precise. All the edges don't have to be the exact distance from the other, just close. So you can see the preview, knocked it back to the original state. Now I'm going to create a little detail on the front. So that's basically a rectangle. Just add a nice little dimension to it. So I'm just getting it to the size and size I like. Only create half of it because I'll just use mirror geometry. Mirror it over, select it, and then I'll just weld the verts, select the edge, and delete. This is a quick way to build things when they're symmetrical. There we go. Take that, scale it out like that a little bit better. Now I'll just add all the edges I need to add. And bevels. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to build a high poly to bake onto low poly. We'd just be able to create a nice high poly and use it in game. But we're not there yet. Sooner or later, consoles will be able to handle unlimited polys, but not right now. So this is a necessary evil to basically build your object twice. So I'm just inserting all the edge loops. And I've also noticed here that I've got some hidden faces. I'm just finishing up these edges. But I noticed before I've got a couple faces at the back that I can get rid of. I can delete because it's just going to be buried into the side of this base, so you're not going to see them. It's a waste of polys where I could use them some other place that you can see. So always be diligent when you're modeling on your low poly, especially because I mean that's the final product. But that you don't have faces that you'll never see. So we're almost done here. I'm just duplicating it around here to finish it up. We're just going to keep continuing with objects as we go along here. So just punching in, just renaming it, and boom, we're done this piece. There we go. So just going to continue on up on this object with the pole. Excuse me. This is just basically a metal pole with another type of metal on top. A little bit of a point. So just pop in all these edges right here. You don't want to round this tip off and make it look like a crayon. So you want to just add the edges in there. Just square it off. Since it's a bit of an odd shape, the insert edge loop tool doesn't always work perfect. I mean, like any program, it's going to have their ups and downs, so you sometimes have to just do a kind of a hack job to get it done here. So I'm just inserting edges where I can using the insert edge loop tool, and I'll use the split polygon tool, which is located under mesh, edit mesh, sorry. and just yeah, just connect them really quick here. Like I said, with the high poly, you don't have to be, pinpoint perfect, everything straight. I mean, it helps it make it look better, and edge flow, and easier to figure out what's what. But sometimes if they're low off, they're low off, because they'll still look nice when you hit smooth. So I'm just adding a little detail in here, a little groove to separate the painted metal from the unpainted metal. So there's the preview of the final once I hit smooth. Excuse me. Sometimes you realize when you hit the preview that sometimes you get kind of a weird, dark, kind of shadowy thing happening around the edges. That all that means is that you just want to take that edge you popped in for constraint use and move it down a bit, and you'll see that disappear. So now I'm just doing the signs that are located on the side of the subway. Excuse me, entrance. These are super simple. It's just a big rectangle. It's a piece of wood. Actually, sorry, a piece of painted metal, but it's still a simple piece. Do that in a matter of a minute or two. Now here's the bigger sign. Again, I'm going to do a little extruding and pull them inside. So I'm just making the framed sections where I'll select the faces and hit extrude. Like I've said in the low poly version, when I use extrude, I don't use the manipulator they give you. I actually just knock it back out to the original QWER shortcuts, W being move. So there we go. I'm just inserting all the little edge loops again that I need. Selecting edges that I want beveled to give some extra smoothness to it. I could just use the shortcut edge loop, select edge loop, but sometimes I just like going around and manually picking the edges. Just makes it feel like sometimes I'm doing more than than I am. So there we go. Again, just picking some values, finally finding one that I think looks good. So you can see my outliner there. I selected this again. I'm just looking. I just unhid the front sign just to make sure that the bevels are somewhat consistent. They don't have to be perfect, but just look the same. You don't want one big huge bevel and then on the other side you got a tight bevel. This wouldn't make sense. Wouldn't be built that way in the first place. Um, so just again adding all these edge loops in here, and you can tell what I mean by trying to keep them a little neat by keeping them straight, because there do end up being large numbers of them. So you can see there's a bit of an anomaly, and all that I needed to do was basically pull those lines out a bit, and then I realized what the problem was that I didn't have the edges in here. That is usually the case if you see one of those weird glitches happening with your smoothed model. Generally, make sure that you have all the edge loops in there that you need. Usually that's the problem. It's always the smallest thing that you've forgotten to do. So just moving on to getting near the end here. Just taking these little framed edges where eventually all of our spindles will be sunk into. So again, this one's super easy because this isn't even actually an enclosed object. It's just 3 sides, so it's basically select edge, insert edge loop tool, boom, scale, done. There we go. And this piece is actually duplicated above. It's the same thing, so I will just duplicate it later on the normal map. So I'm got the base here, whereas earlier on I told you I left those edges in there straight, so that it's easy to insert edge loops like this. On the low poly, I will collapse those so the edge ends up being diagonal. But there we go, nice and fast. And there's our cement base that eventually will attach itself to the level ground. So now I've got this one last chunk ready. Selected a face by accident. Delete that. Go along, select all the edges. I'm going to bevel these guys. Again, just playing with the values. Got where I liked. Now I just selected all the faces and I'm just using cut face tool. Boom, just cutting these edges. And if you notice over to the left on the toolbar, in Maya they have basically a repeat last tool command, and it's G is the keyboard hotkey. Um, this I'm using it with the cut face tool a lot because I'm using it so much I can just hit G, go to another tool, hit G, boom. You can see it right over to the left there. You can see it selected. So I'm just adding the edges the edge loops that I missed. There we go. It's looking pretty good. So show all. I've saved continually throughout. Delete history, save, delete history, save. Again, select, duplicate, add the extension underscore H. Another thing you want to keep an eye on is your history. If you find your Maya starts lagging and chugging on you, it might be that you haven't deleted your history in a while. That's basically your undos, and it can bog down your system after a while. There we go. That was easy enough. Not going to originally wasn't going to bevel that because you don't really see it, but what the hell. So I've got the base here of these side railings. Just selecting all the edges. Again, going to add a bevel to it. It's looking good. Again, remember, just continue to check over your model, rotate it around, make sure everything's looking alright, because sometimes things can get a little weird, and you might not miss something, and you might miss something that's wrong with it. So I'm adding all my edges here. Realize that I've overshot some of them and are creating things that won't look too good once smoothed out. So I just deleted a few, added them back in the proper spots. I'll realize I've missed another one. Add those in. Gonna select did a preview. Realize I missed the inside ones, as you could tell when it created a circle. So let's preview it again. After adding these in, we should be good. Yeah, everything's looking good. Done. Show all. Select what it needs to do. Now it's the light post. And up to the light fixture. This again is another easy one. It says rectangles and cubes. Select all the faces. I'm going to bevel these edges. I'm glad I actually went with this light design as opposed to what is actually in the reference, which is just basically a big sphere. This just looks nicer. And I won't go into it again, but you have realized why I didn't do the sphere. That was a little bit of a Weezer on YouTube, some of their new songs that you just saw. So I'm just adding in all the edge loops what I need with the cut face tool. Looking around, make sure, see if I missed any. You do this enough, you create enough high poly stuff that you can recognize almost immediately when you're flipping around if you've missed a particular edge loop. So let's go down here, finish out the bottom part of the light fixture. Again, bevel these edges. As you can see, there's a whole lot of them. And I'm going to add another one in here, so you tighten it up. Some weird things happen in there. Add a few more edges in to sharpen this up. That's looking good. Just gonna tweak these a bit, maybe give it more of a pinch. Make it look even more like it's made out of metal. Alright, that looks good. Previewed it up, hit number 1, get it back to original state. Now I'm going to do the light bulb area. Alright, well, I actually think I'll just finish up some of the simpler pieces and go to the spindle here. Basically, it's just rectangular, so it shouldn't take too long. I'll get to the light and the top railing in a bit. Those are the more intricate parts. So there we go. There's the spindle. I'm just about to finish up here. Cut face. Oh, looks like I messed up there a bit. I didn't cut the faces. So there we go. Checked it out. Yep, works. There we go. Alright, I'll go to the top part of the railing. Well, I guess the top railing on the side. There is some detail I'll be putting in that little beveled little extrusion there. But I'll do that in a bit. So I'm just adding the necessary edges that need to be put in here. I can delete these ones. Those were just a mistake. So after I just pop all these little bad boys in there, we'll preview this guy up. Again, delete those unnecessary ones. Everything should be fine. So we'll move on to the light fixture. It's basically, I'm just going to maybe create a little frame here, extrude it in where the light bulb will shine. You don't have to worry about building a light bulb inside or anything like that. The texture, like if your lead or whoever decides that yeah, let's turn the light on, you can just use what's known as an emissive texture, which basically adds a glow. If you want to, if you do have the polys, you can always use a glass shader on it and build the light bulb on inside and put an emissive texture on that, and it'll shine through the glass. But generally, this is so high above the character's eye line that you'll never see it, and the emissive gives off the same idea. It's only if it's destructible and maybe you want to show the shattered light bulb on the inside or the socket. So this is a fairly simple. You can tell I just cut the faces there, extruded them in. Now I'm just putting all the edges on that I need to. I'm pretty darn close to the end of this high poly creation. As you can tell by even sped up, it's not that long. Like I said, again, with an object like this, you should be able to do the high poly in a couple hours from beginning to end. And remember to save all the time when working with any program, Maya, Photoshop, 3D Studio Max. Save periodically. I would go probably about every 5 to 10 minutes, because these programs can crash on you. Anything can, and you don't want that frustration. Believe me, if you worked on anything like this at all, you'll understand what I'm saying. And Maya doesn't have an autosave like Max, so you want to be more diligent, saving more with Maya. So I did the light there. What I'm going to do now is the light post. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to excuse me, add in take this little detail off the other base that I did. I'm going to continue it onto this pole. It just makes sense that they would probably continue this design a little more throughout the object. Just aesthetically, it's pleasing. So I'm just basically Control D, duplicating it, moving it up, scaling it up just by pulling the verts and scaling them in to go along with that tapered line of the object. So I'm just placing it, just eyeballing it, make it all one object. Then I create another cube. I'm just going to put a little bit of a border right around where it tapers. So what I'm just select the faces on it, make a couple cuts there, just slightly in because it's going to be buried into this object. This is the easier way to build. You don't need to take that light post and make all these cuts and extrude just to make this little ledge going around. You don't need to do that. Even into low poly, it's better. It's more economical time-wise to do it this way. So I've just made my cuts. Now I'm selecting the edges to make the bevel along this little ledge. So there we go. Just adding all the edges in, all the loops to constrain it. And as you can tell, I've noticed that my little decorations on the sides here are sticking out. So it's all one object. I'll just pull them in so they're nice and buried, and just adjust it as I go along there by just selecting the verts and nudging them in there. So there we go. Looks good. And what I'll do is basically just select that object, that little decoration, duplicate, and rotate. I have my rotate tool set to a constraint of 45 degrees. So every rotation you make, every mouse click, it rotates 45 degrees. So you know that you're going to get 45, 90, 135, 180. So there we go. I got on all four sides. Select all those pieces, combine them. Now I can just do the main pole here. Just bevel the edge a little bit. Add in the edge loops. Put a couple around here to tighten that taper up, so it doesn't look all like it's made out of rubber. Just popping these in individually. So we're almost done with the light post here. Show all, yep. Looks pretty good. And just pop the base in there. And I'm just looking at what needs to be left done, and I've just basically got the little design to do on the side, and then we'll be all done this. And yeah, just have to do that. So I've got one last piece to do. It's this decoration that goes along the railing. What I've done already is I've grouped together all my objects. I have the light post as in one group in my outliner. I've got the side as one group and the front as one group. It just condenses the outliner down, so I don't have as many objects kicking around. And I can open those up as I go along. as I need to. So I've got a little design here that I'm going to do. I've pulled it from another model I had. Basically, I'll make that chunk template in the layer section, um, and so that way I don't have to worry about selecting it by accident or moving it around. And then I can build uh, I can build the design on top of it that I'll be using in this model. And then from there, this is the final piece. So we're done the high poly after this. So yeah, here we go. See, as you can tell, this is the little chunk that I've pulled from another model. I just added it to a layer along the right there. Made it a template, which, as you can tell, it fades out into a gray, and I don't have to worry about deleting it or messing with it. It's like I'm tracing it right now. So I'm creating the little basic shape as I go along here, just extruding the face as I go along. So now what I'll do is I'll make all the necessary cuts, so when I smooth it, it retains its shape. And then what I'll do is I'll duplicate it as a special duplicate, which is Shift D, and what that does is it moves it along. It moves it the exact the amount that you moved it manually, as many times as I hit Shift D after that. So what I did now is I just duplicated it, moved it down to line it up where it will eventually join up with each other when I weld them. Just so I can adjust the edges here, make sure they do line up. And what I'll do is once I've adjusted these edges here, I'll move this one back over top of the original and delete the original. And then, like I said, I will duplicate it. I've made some accidental cuts here, so I'll delete these edge loops. I moved it out to position it for the bake later on. That highlighted face, which I just deleted, will join up with the bottom of these ones. So I'll make the cuts around here. Make sure I get all these interior cuts, so when I do smooth it, it works, retains its shape. So let's just preview it. Oh, missed one there. I'll just select the face, cut face tool, select, cut them along there. And notice that, yeah, it looks all pretty good. So Shift D, move it down, position. Then from here I can hit Shift D as many times as I want to duplicate them in the exact same spot. So it hit it almost about 2 dozen times there. Select them all, combine them into one final object, and I'm just going to cap this off here with a little finished piece. Just kind of makes it look nicer, but I had to wait to do this so I could duplicate the other pieces. So I'm just going to finish this off, close this face in, make the cuts. I just got to weld all these guys together. Yeah, just weld inverts. So there we go. Yeah, looks pretty good. Oops, I noticed I missed a couple edge loops here. I need to insert. So the smooth looks good. Yeah, it looks pretty good here. And there we go. I finished up that final piece, and that concludes the low poly, high poly creation of the subway, New York subway entrance. In part 2 of this video series, I'll be doing the unwrap and the baking of the high poly normals. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial for cgtoots.com, and I will see you very soon. Cheers.